services. So ability to, so if this is all Hi, I'm George Crump, lead analyst with Storage Switzerland. This is another in our ongoing series of Chalk Talk videos on various topics in the technology market. Today we're going to talk about the great hard drive shortage of 2012. We predicted this back about a quarter and a half ago, and it's happening, unfortunately. There was some massive flooding in Thailand where about 70% or so of the worldwide hard drive assembly is, and it's impacting everybody to some extent. In general, what we're seeing from the manufacturers is that the number of shipments of drives is down anywhere from 30 to 50%, and the cost selling price of the drives that you can get have risen somewhere between 50 to 75%. So there's less drives available. The drives that are available are costing more money. So that's a problem that we need to deal with for probably the next 6 months or so. What are ways to deal with that? Well, first, before we jump into that, let's talk about where the impact is going to be. It's going to be sort of a trickle-up effect. The worst place to buy a hard drive right now is probably the laptop, desktop market. They're sort of the low end of the totem pole because they're very cost conscious, and so the pricing there is going to be bad, and it's going to be hard to get technology down there. The second one is going to be the server market. Most people still today boot from their server before accessing data off of a SAN. And then finally, probably the least impacted other than potentially price is going to be the enterprise storage systems. So let's take a look at how that would look, right? We've got a small desktop, laptop user here. They're going to have a problem. We've got a line of servers here, and each one of these typically will have some sort of boot hard drive configuration. It might be a mirrored set of hard drives. It could just be one boot drive to boot off of a SAN. And then in the enterprise, we're going to have a storage system full of hard drives. And of course, these are all connected via some sort of network, either NAS, iSCSI, or fiber channel. And these users, of course, connect here. So the challenge is, how do we overcome this? You really essentially have one option, and that's going to be solid-state storage. Now, solid-state storage is already becoming very prevalent in the laptop, desktop market anyways, mostly the laptop market, because the capacity requirements there aren't as severe, and also the benefits of fast boot, quick sleep, things like that have already been realized. So we're seeing pretty good adoption there. And the quality of the drive doesn't need to be as good. You don't need an enterprise class drive. In the server market, things are a little different there, right? We need probably a little bit bigger storage area because we're going to be storing OS, maybe some temporary files, maybe even some actual data locally. And secondly, the quality's got to be there. I can't have a server that every other day won't boot because a memory chip failed or something of that nature. Also, obviously, there's going to be a lot more write activity to a server than there is to a laptop. And as we've talked about in other videos, flash memory will wear out over time. So you need a certain quality of device there. So it's interesting what to look for. There's essentially two choices today, and I've got a couple of samples here with me. One is a standard solid-state storage device. You can see by the size of it that it's roughly the size of a hard disk and would go into a normal hard disk slot. What this would do is you would plug it into your existing hard drive slot, boot, and ready to go, okay? The challenge is with these is, number one, you're consuming a hard drive slot. At some point, hard drive pricing is going to normalize. We're going to be able to put big hard drives in these things, and you may not want to do that. Also, if you have existing servers today that you want to also take advantage of this of solid-state capability, you may not have hard drives available, hard drive slots available, and secondly, you may not have the time to deinstall it, put a new card in, things like that. But in the past, that's really been your only option. What has happened though recently is a new market has emerged that we call SSD DIMM. This is a sample provided by Viking, and you can see this looks like a memory chip. And what this does is actually install in the DIMM socket in your server, and it is a full SSD drive. And then it comes with a SATA cable that you plug into here and then connect into the SATA connector on the motherboard of the server. So what that allows you to do is put the memory socket, put it in a memory socket, leave your existing hard drive infrastructure alone, so that if you need to expand this environment, you still have those hard drives slots available when the price comes back down and things become more affordable, or you can leverage it to make your hard drives just for capacity. So that's an excellent way to help get over the initial shortage problem. The advantage of the DIMMs is we can make them relatively small, so it could be just small enough, just enough capacity to boot from, which would also bring down pricing, or they can be fairly large if you wanted to actually use it for a capacity sort of configuration in a server. So what are some of the advantages of having a solid state DIMM type of device in a server? Well, I think probably the most obvious one is much faster boot times, right? You're now talking about being able to reboot or boot a server within seconds. Hopefully that's not a performance advantage you see very often, because ideally you don't want to reboot your servers very often. The other thing that you get though is it's an ideal location for swap memory, paging memory. So especially in a virtualized environment, if these were virtual hosts and they were hosting virtual machines, or even servers that were running maybe a database application, things like that, anything that might have like a local logging file, virtual memory, paging areas, things like that are going to be greatly benefited by having solid state to be able to access that. In fact, we're doing some work that would suggest that you can actually lower the amount of RAM you expect to put in a server by putting more flash solid state memory and just letting the paging happen to that. So that's a big advantage. Another advantage is that in many servers, you can't use all the available DIMM slots anyways because of the way the configuration works out. So you probably have free DIMM slots available to you. And then finally, and maybe most importantly, is it allows you to then use the hard drive containers within those servers for full expansion if you want to, so that you can have the solid state device as your bootable area, and then have the hard drives for bigger data sets, data that's not performance sensitive, things like that. In solving the shortage coming up, we really think that technologies like the SSD DIMM make a lot of sense, because the price point of drives is now coming up, and of course flash memory pricing is coming down, and so you can almost take advantage of this shortage, pay maybe a little bit more than you would for a hard drive, and get all the benefits of solid state storage. Thank you for tuning in. I'm George Crump, lead analyst with Storage Switzerland. I'd like to thank Viking for sponsoring this video. That's a wrap.